How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. And from the famous line in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, he's back. Two very, very popular episodes. He's now doing a hat trick of episodes. This is his third appearance. The last two episodes, some of the most popular episodes I've put out there. Today I'm joined by the one and only Sean McInroy. How are you doing?
Mate, that's a hell of an intro. Look, I've never been compared to Voldemort before, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. It's
He's
just the line.
probably
It's
my
just the line. I
favorite
promise.
character in those movies.
Promise it's not
Hey,
to do
look,
well.
he who shall not be named. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah. Everyone listening, you just got to guess who it is. You just got to guess who it is by the voice.
Yeah. Can hear the
No, thanks.
moustache.
Yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on again. I suppose it's been a little bit of a while since we last spoke. But yeah, how are you?
hmm
What's been happening in your world? What have you been up to? I know obviously we've chatted a little bit beforehand, but how is everything
hmm
in your world?
Mate, it's good to be back. I have enjoyed our last couple of chats. It is nice to be able to have a conversation with someone who loves lifting and all things strength as much as I do. And, if people on the other end are listening and maybe watching parts of this, happy fucking days. Mate, life's good. Like I was just telling you, I work predominantly online nowadays. I have some face-to-face sessions, which I think is really important for people working online to remain sharp, to be able to maintain those skill sets that are providing immediate feedback, dissecting movements while they're being performed, not just in a video, and providing feedback like you would when working with someone online. And it allows me, when working with people online, to maintain the confidence that I have in my own ability to look at something, provide feedback on, knowing that they're not getting it in real time. The moment has already passed. They've done their shit, right? And so it just allows me to maintain the confidence that I know that I have. And as I mentioned to you before we started the call, before we started the pod, I almost feel like I don't work nowadays, even though I work every bloody day and a whole lot of it. But there's a shift from having been face to face and having such a taxing experience, albeit great when working with people face to face, but it's draining, right? You're holding court for an hour and you're trying to be engaging and entertaining and enthusiastic and pump them up. And then you go to the next person, you're doing 6 to 8 to 10 hours of that a day potentially, leaves you pretty fucked. And so when I'm only doing a couple of hours a day. I had no one today, no one yesterday. I've got one tomorrow. I've got a few people away this week, but I might do maximum 10 across the week, and most of my time is spent supporting people remotely, right? So that is been doing that about 3 years now,
Yeah.
increasingly full time, and yeah, really love it. So yeah, mate, life's good. Life's good.
Nice. Yeah, and I know we said at the start about tangents, but interestingly, obviously after having a little bit of time off working in a gym now in Thailand, I actually had a conversation. She's actually a little bit of a younger trainer, and she was kind of like assisting with a couple of classes and has got a couple of one-to-ones, and I think she did maybe 5 sessions, like as in back to back, like 5 hours, just like straight off. And at the end, she came in the next day and she was absolutely knackered. Like you could just see that she was tired. And I think sometimes, like when you're saying there about giving energy to a session, if it's a class, a group session, or a one-to-one, you're there as like the host of that session. You've got to keep that energy, and I think
hmm
sometimes for I know obviously the main point is obviously you've got to earn money, so that's why if you're doing sessions in person, that's why you're doing it back to back. But actually, spreading that out a little bit so that you've actually got the energy to maintain that standard of sessions is probably going to serve you much better in the long
hmm
term rather than just like because you hear about it now of just so many trainers just burnt out and knackered because they're just absolutely flogging themselves day to day. Would you kind of agree with that? What do you kind of think on that?
Mate, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. I had spent many years prior to dipping my toe into the online space. This is pre-COVID, right? I had no intention, I would say no desire, but I had no expectation of going online. I'm a very in-person kind of guy. I enjoy that, and I didn't see how I was able to potentially package myself up physically and then do that in an online space, right? So I would just be, you know, the only way to earn more money and sort of build your business face to face in at least in the confines of the type of gym that I was working in, I couldn't have people working for me as smaller trainers. It wasn't going to work. I just had to do more hours. And so I remember there was one day, or this happened a number of times, where I had 12 1 hour sessions in a day. And it's not a good thing to do. Some weeks I was doing in excess of 51. Where do you draw the line between the money that you're earning and a life that you're trying to live outside of the hours to spend the money and enjoy yourself from the work that you put in, right? So that work-life balance sort of situation. And to your point there, you're doing the 5 hours in a row that this person was doing, or whatever it might be. You could spread them out more. And it's like on an individual basis, you've got to look at that and go, all right, what am I doing this for? What sort of standard, as you said, do I want to deliver to person one versus person five? And the next day. And I just look at it like training in a sense that is you need to be appropriately conditioned to the amount of work that you're going to undertake. So if you're used to and you have built up over a number of years, you're used to working a certain amount of hours per day on average across the week with certain bigger chunks of time, you will learn, hopefully, how to lessen the degree of intensity that you might push on the first one or two or maybe three of those 1 hour sessions. So the back, you've got a big week built up over time. I think I can tolerate this, and you prepare yourself. You've got good sleep the night before. Hopefully, you're well hydrated. You're eating well. It's like everything that you're trying to do, or you should be preaching when it comes to performance in the gym for clients. You're trying to perform the best that you can for your clients, providing a service, right? It's the same principles, really, because the energy which you're putting out is fucking exhausting. I remember when I was at that point of my career, my training, I wouldn't say was in the toilet, but it was, I'd say, low priority because I'm doing the typical split shift sort of training model where I'm coaching people in the morning, coaching people in the evening, and the hours between were my only opportunity to eat, maybe train, probably get a nap in because I was pretty fucked, was burning the candle at both ends, and just pre-workout caffeinated, got a monster right here. But it was you just living off that, right? And so look, I'm glad that I went through that. I savvy with their time, and fortunately enough, with the online space being such an easy adjunct, little add-on to what someone's already doing in person, it's a means to provide that additional income that would be spent through just doing more hours in the gym by creating some content, getting some online clients, and alleviating a bit of that demand and stress. So someone might do 4 or 5 hours across maybe 7 hours of a morning to early afternoon, and then spend a few hours in the afternoon, maybe doing a little bit of content, a little bit of editing, replying to some clients, providing some feedback, doing some programming, etc. So they're getting that additional work in, but they're not having to expend that energy like they
Yeah.
would holding court with someone for 2 or 3 hours. They've spent those 2 or 3 hours at the computer by themselves, a cup of tea, whatever it might be.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's what we were chatting about beforehand. Because maybe because I'm a little bit more experienced, I've tried to plan it so that I had gaps in there, and I wasn't rushing from session to session. Because for example, yesterday there's basically like there's a main gym and then there's an area for classes, and it's just a little bit further down the street. So rather than rushing, because number one, I never like being late for a session either, and I think if you're doing that, you're always going into a session flustered. And I just said, sometimes rather than having
Hmm.
sessions back to back, because I think the other argument is that the younger trainers want to be seen on the gym floor coaching and want to be seen, there. But equally, you can have that gap and still walk around and chat with people. At Titan, there's a little like cafe area. Like I've sat down, had a coffee, had some food, or like a snack or something, and just chatted with members. You're still there, you're still being seen, but at least then you've got an opportunity to speak with people and recover a little bit, rather than just rushing around and looking as though you're almost too busy to speak with members. So I think that's a good point to kind of like manage your energy a little bit. Diving into because obviously speaking about online, the content and information you share out there is stuff that people can apply straight away, and is effective. And I think one topic, and this is from my experience of clients who have been beginners who are progressing further up, is sometimes not just the weight on the bar progresses, but the things outside of their sessions need to progress as well. And I kind of wanted to get
Hmm.
what does that mean to you, and what are the things that need to progress alongside the weight on the bar as you're getting ready for sessions, if that kind of makes sense.
Mate, it makes perfect sense. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. So, for those people listening, grab a pen and paper. So, when we are training in the gym, we are using statistical metrics to gauge our progress, right? Weight lifted, reps achieved. Things that we can record down and statistically, reliably done. All right, pretty simple. You're not going to see load and repetition progressions as easily achieved as you once did. And you may be quote unquote stuck on a particular weight for a particular number of repetitions for a number of weeks. This is where myself in the past and a lot of people at the moment find themselves in their journey. They think they're plateaued. They think because they're not going forward at the same rate in which they once did, ergo, they must be stuck. What they're doing isn't working. Well, no, you're just building up resiliency, building up technique quality, building up capacity to then push through and earn the right to put more weight on the bar. All right, cool. That sounds great. But how do I know if I'm in an actual plateau or whether it's sort of just this situation? All right. Now, what I want to rely upon is three key metrics, subjective metrics. Okay, so the statistical, which are the ones that are recordable, and then we've got subjective, which are felt, are experienced, right? So we want to rely upon technique. We want to rely upon improvements in technique. We want to rely upon our recoverability and rely upon our perception of effort, perception of difficulty, right? And I suppose lastly, there is confidence. But these are all wrapped up into the one, and they all intersect. They influence one another, right? Because as your technique improves at the same weight and the same reps, so statistically, like the quality supporting that, your perception of difficulty reduces slightly as your technique improves. These all work in sync with one another, and then your recoverability improves at the same time. And with that, wrapping those up together, the glue of that is your confidence, right?
Yeah.
And we know that you can't successfully attempt new weights and new reps at a given weight unless you're first confident enough in yourself and your competency to apply yourself without overthinking and having it be clunky and fucking it up in some way, right? So what I like to do, and this is why I want people to get a pen and paper and pen,
Yeah.
is all right. Well, how do you know if technique improves? It's like, well, it's hard to know without a coach, that's for sure, right? People ask me questions all the time, and my default answer, not just because I'm trying to sell my services, but it's get a coach, get someone with a better set of eyes for what it is you're trying to identify. Like, I don't know fucking shit about cars. I don't try to fix my own car. I take it to the mechanic so he can do it for me. I pay him for the service. Happy days. Thank you. Right? I don't take it to the mechanic and then pay him to tell me how I need to fix the car. I get him him to do it for me. That's what he's skilled at doing. But when it comes to bettering one's progress in the gym, obviously it's a different set of variables, a different degree of progress, but different process. But people just don't quite grasp the value, ongoing value of a coach to provide you with a skill set, because people falsely assume that the progress that they achieved in the past and the standards that allowed them to see that progress will allow them to continue to see progress in the future because it worked in the past. Well, unlike a lot of other things in life, just something worked in the past doesn't mean it will continue to work in the future. Why? Because if it worked, you adapted to it. And if you adapted to it, it won't continue to work, because that is the process of adaptation, right? So helping people understand that first and foremost is really important, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know where you're letting yourself down if you don't have a higher level of competency and skill and diagnostic capacity. Like an experienced coach can pick apart your shit much better than you can, right? Anyway, so that's little tangent within a tangent, right? Anyway, what I like to look at from a technique standpoint, I'm full of tangents, mate. From a technique standpoint, we look at technique I do it at least anyway. Technique, perfect technique is about 100, right? 100 out of 100 perfect. The same for everyone, as perfect as you can make it, right? Now, your technique should only ever be perfect at the very beginning of a set with quite a few repetitions, or a warm-up set, or something which is sub-maximal in intensity, sub-maximal in difficulty. There's no reason why your technique should be anything but the very best you can do. Yeah, no excuse. Now, we don't make progress when the shit that you do is perfect, because if something is perfect, it suggests it's not difficult enough to be effective.
Yeah.
If you're finishing a set of 5 reps, 8 reps, 10 reps, 12 reps, whatever, and your 12th repetition looked just as easily performed from a speed, from a stability, from a technical standpoint as your first repetition, it wasn't hard enough. Wasn't hard enough. It's a glorified warm-up set.
Yeah.
Glorified warm-up set. So knowing that good technique is a range, it's not just perfect, because you can be a little bit less than perfect and it's still really good, right? All right, well, where does that range? What does that range look like? All right, well, I like to look at the 90th percentile, right? The top 10% of what your movement could potentially look like, right? Now, we're not interested in anything below 90, because you could do it in the 80s somewhere, 88, 85. All right, cool. 88 out of 100. Yeah, okay, you could do it, but it's not really something that is worth doing. Maybe a little bit too unsafe. You're lowering the standard, losing tension, whatever it might be, right? All right, cool. 90th percentile. And so say a new 1 rep max or 3 rep max, or whatever it might be doing, or something that's super duper challenging, a weight that you think you're stuck on, and it's around about a 92 out of 100. All right. Well, the goal isn't just to put more weight on the bar or do more reps because you got it done and it was acceptable. It's only just above that acceptable line, right? Well, we don't put more weight on the bar or more repetitions because it's going to sink under that acceptable line, right? It's going to be in the 80s. Our goal is to stick with the same weight, stick with the same reps, and then build the technique quality from 92 to 94, 96, 98, 100 or so, right? Now, that might take a number of weeks, and you're quote unquote stuck on the same weight. No. You're building technique quality, building resiliency, building capacity, building confidence, building recoverability, and building your perception of difficulty. So in enduring that weight. So when you put more weight on the bar again, you're not putting more weight on the bar when your technique is at a 92. You're putting more weight on the bar when your technique is moved towards a 100. And what does that do to your technique? It pushes it back down to 92, and the cycle goes on again, right? So I like to look at the way we pick apart technique, and I use numbers, not to represent specific positions so much, but as a concept around technique and the scale by which technique and acceptable technique isn't one set position. And we don't want to see perfect repetitions at very challenging loads and intensities. We want it to be this is the irony of results, that what I call the irony of results. We want the shit that we do to be really, really good. It needs to be good, to be effective, to be efficient, to be safe. But it also needs to be challenged. It needs to be maybe a little bit unstable. You need to have a little bit of breakdown potentially. There needs to be at least some slowing down of the concentric phase, as it means to indicate you are close enough to failure for those repetitions to be effective. So we need to be a little bit less than perfect, but not too far away, because it becomes dangerous and inefficient, right? So that's why I said the 90th percentile. And then we look at things like recoverability in terms of how fucked you are, basically, after the work that you do. Now, if you're doing multiple sets on the same exercise, which I assume you would be, does it feel like you need 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to fully recover, then do another set? All right, cool. That's a means to gauge recovery. And then subjectively gauge how do you feel the later that day or the next day? What level of quote unquote fucked do you feel? It's crude, but it's an effective way to gauge how you feel. How does that session on day one then impact day two, for instance, right? The next day. Unrelated muscles or whatever, just how fatigued do you
Yeah.
feel, maybe nervous system wise on the next day. All right, cool. And then you same weight, same reps, improving the technique. Now we're looking to improve alongside that your recoverability. Now, it doesn't take you 6, 7, 8 minutes. It might take you 3 or 4. Less fucked later that day. Feel pretty good the next day. That's progress, right? Recovered whilst your technique is also improving. Again, these all sort of tend to happen at the same time. And lastly is your perception of difficulty. Okay, that 92 out of 100 example, from a technique scale standpoint, and your recoverability were 7, 8 minutes, and your perception of difficulty is a 10, 11 out of 10. Eyeball poppingly hard. All right, cool. Well, as your technique improves, it moves up mid 90s. Your recoverability decreases, well, improves, but the length of time decreases to be fully recovered. Your perception of difficulty goes from like busting out past 11 out of 10, it's down now to a 9, right? The next week it's an 8.5, it's an 8. So by the time 3, 4 weeks have gone past, you've stuck with the same weight, stuck with the same reps, but you appreciate the process. When you finally put more weight on the bar, you are so much more confident with what you're doing. This weight doesn't have any sort of voodoo around it. It's not it's another day, another walk in the park, right? And you've improved the quality of your technique. You've maximized your recoverability. You have decreased your perception of difficulty as much as you need and want to relative to that load. There's always going to be a degree of difficulty there. And your confidence is sky high because you've just done the same thing week after week and just tighten those loose screws. So when you put new weight on the bar, you're feeling confident as hell. You know what to do. You're trusting in the process, right? So something, as you can tell, I've rattled this off many times in the past. And again, it's a really important concept that I think people need to know. People need to get their head around and not just prioritize the weight that they lift, albeit the metric that we hold on a pedestal to be what deems success. Because whether you want to get stronger or we want to build muscle mass, we're using how much weight you lift over time as the metric to justify or indicate, rather, the success that we're achieving or not. But as we become more experienced, we can't rely solely on the number increasing week to week. It's just unrealistic, right? So we need those subjective metrics, which are really going to push us between. You're talking about other things that will help support your performance, right? Yeah, that's sort of like in the gym and training and concept wise. Now, we want to keep things as simple as possible. A while ago, that sleep is the most performance, and I know it's not a drug, but performance enhancing drug there is, right? Because you can take all the stimulants you want. You can take, if you're running on, shitty sleep quality and quantity wise, you are trying to push shit uphill, right? And you're going to have a very, very tough time training hard enough, consistently enough, and obviously recovering well enough because you're not sleeping, you're
Yeah.
not giving yourself the opportunity to recover, which is what we do when we sleep. To then turn around and do that again, the quality of the work that's done over the period of time needed to achieve the results you want to, which will determine the overall success of your results. And so sleep, first and foremost, quality, quantity. Find out for you what is the sweet spot of length of sleep, how dark you need your room, the temperature, down to the fucking number of what's it, the thread count, right?
That's
Whatever on your linen,
yeah.
right? Well, whatever you need to have the best possible sleep, because you want to wake up feeling restored and go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time every single fucking day. One of the best things that I did was become non-negotiable on that. I go to bed at 8:30, I wake up at 4:30. For me, 8 hours is perfect. I'm an early riser anyway, and that's absolutely perfect for me. I usually naturally wake up around 4 to 4:30, and I'm usually just I'm it's rare that my alarm actually goes off because I'm just a whisker short of 8 hours, and or sometimes I go to between 8 and 8:30. At the moment, it's it is basically on summertime here in Australia, and the sun is still up at that time, which is makes me feel like a child or a really old person. But I wake up, I wake up feeling very restored, and I love my mornings. Right,
Yeah.
so sleep number one, unquestionably number one. Hydration. I, I have big, 1 liter bottles. I'll always make sure I have some hydration fluid in there every single time I drink. I don't need that much sodium. I have a good few liters of water a day with some additional minerals, and it's just something that needs to be created as habit. And then for me, I've got it by my desk to make sure that I make it as easy as possible, and it's a visual reminder as well as I know based on that being 1 liter, I'm going to have 2 to 3 plus other glasses I might have when I have food, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's as simple as it is. It's a
Yeah.
non-negotiable. And then we look at nutrition, right? And so everyone's going to be a little bit different. And when it comes to what will keep you adherent for the length of time necessary to achieve consistency standpoint, what's going to yourself eating the most nutrient dense, macronutrient balanced and appropriate for you and your goals, etc. Uh, long term, and knowing that food isn't inherently good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, to the point where you need, you need, I'll die on this hill, you need to have calorically dense, nutrient deficient options, whether it be pizza, whether it be burgers. You need to have that shit in your diet as a means to keep your adherence high for the bulk of the time. You want to be eating healthier.
Yeah.
You could try to go no and go to cheat meal. No, it's a poor relationship with food that you have, which I've had in the past because that's what you buy into the idea. Oh, it's a cheat meal. No, no, no. Your diet isn't something you should be cheating on. You should be fully empowered to enjoy something which is calorie dense and nutrient deficient for what it is, and know that this is an intentional, intelligent ploy to
Yeah.
ensure that for the 90, 85% remainder of my week, I'm eating much better meals from a
Yeah.
nutritional standpoint, right? But that again, it takes a while to get to that point. I haven't always been in the position that I am now. One of the things I find the most easy to do is, fortunately enough, I work with a food delivery company
Yeah.
who provide fresh meals delivered every Sunday, and they're absolutely amazing. And we in Sydney, we have a bit of a luxury. Uh, there are many of these for months have provided me with, they've got great options. They taste great. They've got lasagnas. They've got different pastas. They've got steak and potato options. They've got chicken and parmigiana options. All these things which make me feel like I am. I'm having a degree of decadence, but they are calorie controlled and they have intelligently and intentionally swapped out certain things in those meals to provide the same or better level of taste, in mouth feel, but have removed a lot of the more calorie dense options and replaced them with more nutrient dense options. What we wouldn't necessarily realize. And you don't need to worry about because they control them, right? Awareness first. You need to be aware of where you're letting yourself down sleep, hydration, nutrition, those three pillars, right? Because if you don't have those in place, you can't expect that your performance in the gym and your recovery from previous performances to then perform really well the next day and so on. It snowballs. You can't expect to be performing well in the gym. You can't expect for those statistical metrics that we talked about, relying upon lifting more weight, to be bettered if we
Yeah.
aren't setting in the right foundations to achieve those.
Yeah, absolutely. There was quite a lot of, as you were chatting there, there's quite a lot of things that were going around my head there because I completely agree with you in terms of if people are going to be feeling more confident when they're lifting, they're more likely to put more weight on the bar. Whereas two kind of questions following up from that. The first thing is that you do hear. You still hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not going as heavy today. I'm just working on technique." But like what you say, they just look like glorified warm-ups. Whereas it's a case of, come on, like you've got to challenge yourself at some point. And do you think that comes from they maybe don't feel as though they've maybe earned the right to put the weight on the bar. They're just not confident in technique, or they've maybe just not been shown how to do it correctly. When you've spoken there about having a coach, because some people just go in mindlessly, not having a coach, or even going to classes and being shown what to do. And then the second part there is all the things that you've said in terms of the other variables that we're tracking. You haven't said anything that's kind of like elitist or that general population clients can't do. You've said there, how fucked do you feel?
Mm.
Are you eating enough? Are you getting enough water? Have you just got a visual aid from there? Do you think sometimes
Yeah.
people think that to progress
Mm.
that they have to do something more complex than what it is outside of the sessions compared to look how do you feel
Mm.
how fuck do you feel after these sessions? Oh, actually I feel better after one session. Oh, cool, so we can progress from there. I know there's kind of like two parts there, but does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, look, I'll answer that one first because I'll probably go back and forget the first one. I'll get you to remind me. It's in the top of my head now, but I'll probably forget. Anyway, yeah, so with that one, what was that one again? Now I'm thinking about that one too much. That
uh,
was,
so we're on about in terms of people thinking that the other variables that it has to be something elitist and something crazy that they need
oh,
to pick
about,
as opposed to
yes,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, well, I think, thank you very much. I think it comes back to what we as a society have been sold into believing for such a long period of time, that is unrealistic results in unrealistic periods of time. And so people are sold 6 minute abs, or just make this one change and you'll lose all this fat, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on, right? And so people are overpromised and under delivered to when it comes to the amount of effort, the little amount of effort that they need to put in, and the exceptional reward, the results that they get on the back end. And we both know, and most people do, it's just a load of shit. It sells well. People love more of a rational understanding of how a bit of effort and getting a lot back. Your ROI is going to be massive. It's like, it's just not realistic, right? Results take time. And that's why I talk with the tone in which I do. I try to be, depending upon if I'm talking more in general, in this sort of context, I'm talking to an individual, I might be a little bit more direct and stern. Uh, to let people know, to try to break through, excuse me, try to break through maybe the level of ridiculousness trying to sell them shit, how gullible that you're saying things not to be elitist, right? So firstly, thank you very much. I pride myself on that because no matter who I'm talking to, whether someone is a high flying CEO or someone, you know, cleans toilets for a living, you say you're just people and you want to achieve a result, right? And like, how can, or someone's really experienced or not, or whatever demographic they fit in, what their goals are, whatever. It's the same information, right? The physiology and the changes that we're trying to make to our physiology are the same. We're trying to lose weight, gain weight, or sort of recomposition our weight, build strength, build skills and confidence, all that sort of stuff. It's the same shit, right? Now, the programming variables and the length of time and your starting point and your genetic base and general confidence and demeanor and all these sort of things will influence that. No matter who's listening to what I'm saying, will be able to go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right, cool. I can adapt that. I can adopt that relative to what I'm doing in my training. Someone wants to build muscle mass or drop body fat or get stronger, et cetera, et cetera. These things still apply, right? Because I need people to feel confident in their ability to make decisions for themselves. And people aren't going to be confident enough to make decisions for themselves now and long term, the length of time necessary, are educated and sold into a process by which they need to show up every day and do little things accumulatively, which by themselves, day by day, feel like fuck all, but understand through the educational framework that's been expressed, they know and respect what they need to do, and they don't expect unrealistic results in an unrealistic period of time. What I like to say is significant results are built on the back of insignificant or seemingly insignificant details or seemingly insignificant efforts. Because every time you go to the gym, every time you perform a repetition, every exercise that you do by itself out of context means fuck all, right? But for the results you want to achieve, or in addition to that, nutritionally, every time you say no to that chocolate bar in the grocery aisle, in a grocery line, it's on the they've got them there by the checkout, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The impulse buys. That's the word I was looking for. The impulse buys. Every time you say no to that, or every time you say yes to something where you should say yes to, right? By themselves, they're so seemingly insignificant. But for the results you want to achieve, they're the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters. Because it's the accumulation of that seemingly insignificant act or action or effort, saying yes or no, etc., etc., going to the gym versus snoozing your alarm. All these things accumulatively achieve the result you want to, but it's super unsexy, super duper unsexy. What's sexy is 6 minute abs. It is a little bit of work and a lot back for that effort. That's what sells, right? And unfortunately, my approach, and that's why I speak with such conviction, because I believed all this shit in the past. I've been doing this a long time. I've made every mistake under the sun. And that's why I don't want people to make those same mistakes. It's like, all right, cool. How would I need to have been spoken to? What would I need to have heard? How would it need to have been expressed in order to sort of break through, to penetrate all that muck that people are overexposed to? And it's through being direct, being stern, being succinct, being easily understood, and something that anyone can feel confident in applying, right? Because there's no need to gatekeep information. There's no need to present information in a convoluted way. I work very hard from a communication standpoint to ensure that what I say and how I say it is said in as easily digestible way as possible. We don't have a further explanation of what was said. Questions as to, oh, okay, that makes sense. What about that? Right. And so it's less about it's asking questions because, oh, okay, now let me know about this, because you've explained that so brilliantly, right? But when you say the same things, as you know, as a coach, when you say the same things over and over and over again, and this is why the value of working with people in person is a non-negotiable with someone sort of newer to the industry, because how the fuck do you expect to be a quality communicator with someone remotely when it's a back and forth dynamic where you're providing feedback, they're giving videos or answering questions, however your structure may be, and you're just going back and forth like that. It's not in real time, certainly not while they're doing stuff, not set to set where they can make corrections and whatnot. Now, they're asking questions, you're providing feedback. You know
Sorry, Sean, I lost you a little bit there.
Sincerely, you need and want it to land, not be with people remotely, right? Is that just like I am talking to you now, I'm getting reaffirming body language cues, right? If you nod, smiles, uh, these positive notes to tell me that what I'm saying is landing the way in which it's intended. And unless you're working with people face to face for a good period of time and explaining things, re explaining things, refining your dialogue, your communication, which took me a long fucking time to make sure that I was saying things in as clear and as understandable of a way as possible. So no matter who I'm talking to, hence why I do seminars now, not knowing the motley crew of people that may show up, and they always have a good range of people, I'm expressing the same information. And a lot of the people that come to my seminars are coaches because those coaches are going off to work with everyday folks who are also in that same seminar sitting right next to them. So some people are taking that information and applying it directly for themselves, like some people who may be listening to this. And then other people who are coaches who might be listening to this are going to take that information and go, oh, cool, I'm going to, absorb it and put it into my own tone of voice, so to speak, and apply it to what I already know, what I've already been using as, within my toolkit, and then help my clients on the back end of that, right? And make it as easy as possible, as frictionless as possible between my experience and what I'm saying, and someone else can immediately apply it. Or if you're a coach, how can I use this to then help my clients apply it, right?
Yeah,
So there's
definitely.
so there's that part of that sort of two-parter. Now you'll have to remind me what the first part was
Uh,
because it
com
was about
com
something, but I'm it's going to take me too long to remember.
confidence in terms of their lifts when they're saying, "Oh, I'm just focusing on technique." Whether that's they've not been shown the correct
Mm,
technique, or maybe they've got a little bit of fear of weight, or maybe they've not earned the right to put the weight on the bar. But just touching on what you were saying there about
hmm
the general population, everything's the same depending on what level you're at. It's just the variables that you change from there. I think sometimes, even though
hmm
it's not the sexy stuff, it means that you can do that every single day and you can do it consistently, as
hmm
opposed to having, like, I don't know, building a ice chamber in your house, which you might use three times, then be like, this takes up so much time, I'm not going to bother doing that again. At least those things are easy. You could even just do like what you said before. You could even just use a pen and paper, scale of 1 to 10. How was I feeling today? How hard was that session? And just note it down. It doesn't have to be really complicated, and those are
mm,
skills that people can implement straight away, as opposed to, all right, well, you need to do this 6 minutes. All right, so after this 6 minutes abs, do I get abs, or do I need to do that every day, or do I need
mm,
to there? At least with the information
mm,
that you're sharing and you're putting out, it's kind of like, okay, you can do this right now. You can start doing this right now. Do it every day, and you will progress. Maybe not in 6 minutes, but you're gonna be able to progress it from there.
mm.
So yeah, I thought that was interesting to touch on, and yeah, just going back to the second part of that. Do you think people maybe think that they haven't earned the right to put weight on the bar, or they maybe just haven't been shown technique? Why do you think people don't want to are so kind of like invested in getting it 100%, and like what you said earlier about making it just a glorified warm up?
Look, I think to my long-winded answer before when I was talking about the metrics of progress, the subjective metrics, right? Which I think I spoke about for a fucking 15 straight minutes, didn't take a breath. So it's on brand for me, mate. It's on brand. That's why I like chats like this because it allows me just to rattle off, just go down a rabbit hole. Anyway, I think a lot of it comes down to a lack of, well, let's look at it this way. You mentioned confidence. I've mentioned confidence, right? You can't expect someone to achieve as good of a level of results as they possibly could if they're not confident within themselves. All right, how do you develop confidence? You develop confidence on the back of competency, right? Because you can't expect it in an arena if they don't have the skill at the base, build that skill set. Test engineering what what someone is struggling with, what we need to implement from a strategy standpoint, from a root cause standpoint, and rather than looking at the symptoms of the problem, that being someone walking in the gym and maybe not being all that confident, you're like, well, what, rather than just telling someone, always start from the bottom and have people understand why we're doing what we're doing. So, firstly, you want to find out of someone, whether you're a coach or you're self training, you want to find out why you want to train. What results are you trying to achieve? What's your why? Why does it mean something to you? Because no one wants to get abs or a bigger butt or stronger squat just for the sake of it. There's going to be an emotional and or psychological driver pushing that goal. You want to try and unpack what that is and the why behind it. A lot of it comes down to feeling better about oneself. All right, cool. Let's unpack that a little bit more, right? And then, without going down that rabbit hole, it's sort of just trying to determine what it is that pushes someone or yourself, if it's yourself that we're talking about here, and then from the base, understand. All right, what does my program look like? Or from a coaching standpoint, I'll talk from a coach's standpoint. The process of their programming, one, it's for them, so it only makes sense. I'm gathering as much information about them as possible. But to further that, I let them know why I'm choosing these exercises and maybe not all those other exercises, because there's always going to be more exercises left out of a program that
Mm.
are chosen. There's always going to be more set and rep structures and methods and progressions that aren't chosen than are chosen. So having them involved, having them buy into the process, having them understand the reasons as to why they're doing the things that they're doing builds confidence in the process because they understand the process. Can't expect someone to buy into something. Lifting weights and the progressive overload model that we all sort of need to run by in some way, shape, or form to see results, and the exercises that we lean on and the techniques that we use, they're all very much the same, right? Within reason. And you can't expect someone to become confident in that arena, in that space, if they've just been, or at least not as quickly as they could be, if they're just sort of just drip fed sort of bits and pieces of information and knowledge and just expected on that on the rations of
Yeah.
information to be a super confident version of themselves. But well, why not just bolster someone's confidence with as much information without bombarding them again that they give around the level of educational bits and pieces that you're are you just again working with people face to face is important. Are you just getting like blank stares when you're expressing things? As you can tell, I can talk a lot. So when I'm explaining things to people and I got someone who's very actively listening, I'm going to give them a little bit more. Someone who's kind of checked out a little bit, I know, pump the brakes a little bit and give it to them in bite-sized chunks and let them develop a keenness organically for that bettering of themselves a little bit slower. All right, cool. I still want it to be as quick as possible. It allows them to be at that end point, which is as confident as possible, as quickly as we can get them there, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it comes down to education, explaining things very simply, why we're doing what we're doing, why we've chosen this, why we've chosen that, why we're doing a box squat instead of a full squat without the box, why we're doing slow tempo, the value of tempo work, why we're pausing, why we need to brace the upper back when we squat, why we need to ensure we're screwing our feet in when we squat. Just using that as an example, why we have accessory exercises, what these accessories means, and maybe not another free way. People understand why they're doing what they're doing, has them not just buy into you as the coach, or if you're not a coach, it just helps you buy into the process, which then builds that knowledge base, builds the skill set. So when someone goes into the gym, it builds retention to you long term, is what I was going to say. When someone goes in the gym, pertaining to your questions, like, oh, I just just want to work on technique. Well, if you've bought into the process because you've been sold it appropriately by the coach in question, so someone I'm working with, I don't have people go into the gym just to work on technique. They're working on technique every single fucking time they touch a barbell or a dumbbell. It's always going to be reinforced, right? It's a cop out. Now, I want someone to go into the gym and work as hard as they can relative to what they have in the tank. Knowing that not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows. Not every day you walk into the gym, you've got 100% in the tank. Rarely do you have 100% in the tank. You might be 90 odd, right? But some days, especially if you're female, depending upon where you are in your cycle, you might be running on 25%,
Yeah.
right? But empty the tank, give it 25%, give it 100% of that 25%, right? And so this is a conversation I have with people often, right? It's a matter of, and even myself, right? I'm just speaking to a former version of myself, right? There's sometimes a recent version of myself, right? It's like not every day is going to be absolutely killer. You want to make sure that you are doing the very best you can from a technical standpoint, improving your technique. From an effort standpoint, you're trying as hard as you can. You're not always working with a consistent level of input, but so you can't expect the same level of output in terms of, actual statistical results. But from a matter of technique and effort, there's two key controllable variables within a training session. You have maximized what you caught on that day. Doesn't mean you've maximized the total gross load lifted, but you've maximized the potential of what that day had for you. And so it's understanding it. And these are conversations I'll have with clients very early on before they hit any plateaus where they can kind of just walk into the gym, stumble on the dumbbell, and then get bigger and stronger, right? So if you set these platforms, you set these sort of foundational structures before they're necessary, before someone gets to a point where they start to plateau or their enthusiasm starts to wane or all these things start to happen, they are in a position of being proactively aware and confident as to what will let them down potentially before it ever does, so it never does, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think with that, going back to like the first point that you said in terms of we've touched on confidence quite a lot there, but if you've given them the information, if they understand why, it's going to give them a little bit more confidence because one thing that you said there is, if you're saying things with conviction, if you're providing enough information, they're kind of like, ah, right, okay, so this must be the best way to be able to be able to do that, and as well, it's going to be specific
Mm,
for that person, and be like, look, this is what we're going to do because this is going to allow you to do X, Y, or Z because you struggle with this in your squat or this or that, and then once you've got that foundation, like what you're saying, then you can start having a look at like, right, okay, so how did you feel after we implemented this one thing? Oh, actually, I felt really good. All right, cool. Let's load this
mm,
up a little bit more. Whereas I think sometimes, yeah, because we live in a world now where there is so much information. I think sometimes, like what you were saying there about, how you're speaking to clients, to coaches, when to not overwhelm them with information because there's so much stuff that's like, we've got to do this, and it's like, well, actually, what's specific for me, and also
mm,
like what's beyond that information. Do this one exercise. This is going to help with your squat. Okay, why? Who's it
mm,
for?
mm,
What's the impact of that? Which I think sometimes, when we're looking at people who want to progress, that overwhelm can sometimes that overwhelming information can sometimes like just paralyze people and just be like, oh well, I'll just focus on technique and I'll get stronger. I'll get
mhm.
stronger a little bit later, as opposed to applying something and doing those habits beforehand. Quite a lot of good
Mhm.
information in there for coaches and Gen Pop clients to take away. But as I've asked before, there's quite a lot of gold nuggets in there. But for everyone listening today, the last question that I like to ask is, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom, Sean?
How long we got? Take home points, the words of wisdom. Keep it simple, right? Keep it simple is the first thing that comes to mind. And now that is sort of pretty universally applicable across everything in life. But people are looking for or assuming that the answers to the questions that they have, the results that they want to achieve, are found in a far more complex and format or approach that they haven't heard or seen before on other podcasts or just in general things. Because simple isn't sexy. Like I said, hydration, sleep, nutrition, three pillars of performance and recovery. You want to have a program which is consistent with the goals you want to achieve, the outcomes of that program, bigger biceps, bigger glutes, stronger deadlift, you name it. You want to make sure that the decisions made in that program are aligning with that outcome, because there's always going to be more exercises and more training and programming variables not chosen that are chosen. So making sure that the program that you have is as well suited as possible, because programming, excuse me, programming just like food isn't inherently good or bad, but
Excuse me.
of officially get 3, 6, 12 months, 2 years into a particular programming structure and path, and put in time, put in effort, see results, but maybe not get as far as you think you'd like to or you should, because you can't substantiate results you don't achieve, because it takes a long time. If you get 12 months into a process and you get 6 months worth of results, you don't know that you could have gotten there 6 months prior had the decisions made around your programming and whether you were coached properly or not, and more effectively, you could have gotten there 6 months earlier. You don't know what you don't know, right? And this was me. I'm just speaking to a younger version of myself, because I trained for a long time and I had more holes in my training methodology than Swiss cheese. I would train hard and train consistently for a long time, and it worked very well to smother and hide all the issues in my training. And that's why I speak with such conviction, because I didn't have someone talking to me, expressing things in such a way that would penetrate all the bro science and the meathead, and trained accordingly. I did a bro split for more years than I care to admit to or even remember. It's a long time. I've repressed that. But it comes back to just keeping things simple, because everything that I've tried in the past years ago, and so many methods that people apply, we don't want details. We want to be detail oriented. We want to be specific around exercises chosen, progressions of those exercises, detailed around the level of technique, being pedantic with the quality of the technique, how we're dictating progress, not just by weight or by reps, but by those subjective metrics, being detailed, not putting more weight on the bar to have earned the right to do so. All right, cool. But the programming itself, the actual actions that someone has to take are pretty simple. 4 to 6 exercises a day, 3 to 4 sets an exercise. Some might be supersetted, some might not be. You know what I mean? They're all done with intent. They're all done with intention, because we know what has to be done. We know the level of quality, what I describe as quality, quantity, and intensity of the work that we need to do in order to achieve the objective that we want over the period of months, if not years, that it'll take to get there.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. It's just detailed, right? If you're building a house and you just look at the house, you're going to look at it and be intimidated by you don't know how to do it. Well, that's why there's plans in place. That's why there's a process. That's why, there's excavation and building, putting a slab down, and, plumbers and electricians and carpenters at different points, right? Because there's a process by which that house is eventually built. If you want to build a big deadlift, a big set of glutes, a big whatever it might be, it's the objective is what you're looking at, because that's the goal you want to achieve. Yes, but you don't think about that. You think about the process. You want to be objective focused, but process driven. Yeah. Objective focused, but process driven. You're concentrating on the day-to-day accumulation of little, seemingly insignificant efforts, which build into something of significance over time. It's not sexy. It's very simple. And you're guaranteed to get results. You just got to be patient enough to see it through.
Yeah, definitely. It goes back to when you said before about the if you take your car in, you'd ask the mechanic to help. And I think sometimes there's a tendency when it comes to fitness, strength training, whatever goal you've got, bigger deadlift, whatever it is that it's going to happen in double quick time. Whereas going back to when you said, you know, the CEO or people from there, people don't just leave school and all of a sudden they walk into being a CEO of a company. You know, they clock in every day, Monday to Friday. You know, clock in, clock out, get the work done, go home, recover, go in the next day. And I think sometimes there's a distorted view of actually fitness and getting stronger should happen overnight, whereas actually for any success, you know, it takes time. There's a reason why, you know, if you're a CEO, you've spent X amount of years doing the other work in the background to lay that foundation so that you can become that CEO or you can become that 200 kilo deadlifter or whatever weight it is you're at on that. So I think that was a really good sum up of everything that we've chatted about there. For everyone listening that might have any questions about what we've chatted about today, Sean, or want to see the content and information that you put out there, or people that want to reach out to you, where could people find you or reach out to you, Sean?
Mate, Instagram is the best place to reach out to me. Sean, Sean dot McInroy, McInroy is my Instagram handle. My beautiful face is the profile picture. Can't miss me with my bald head and mustache. So yeah, look, I'm like anyone nowadays. My phone is glued to my hand. So if people have problems with something, they need some coaching, whether it be more higher tier one-on-one direct coaching with myself, which is the bread and butter of what I do. People think because I have a large following online that I have like this sea of people that work for me and do things, minions. They're right. No, it's me. And I just like creating content, and people have liked that content, and that content has is followed by a lot of people. I'm still working with people, just like anyone else. I've just built up a lot of expertise, made a lot of mistakes, as I've mentioned, worked and learned from those mistakes, and apply that with the coaching that I do today. So if someone's interested in that, send me a message, or I have lower tier options as well. If someone just wants quality programming and support that way without the additional cost of the direct one-on-one coaching, that's also an offer. All through my Instagram, you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Sean, for taking the time to jump on again. Like I say, the last two times, really, really popular episodes. I enjoyed speaking with you as well. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.